Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckman of Gold Derby here with Grace McLean for the new musical Suffs. And what's interesting about this, Grace, is you're one of the only people in this cast playing a male character
Uh-huh.
because it's this all-female cast, and you're President Woodrow Wilson. And it feels like I feel like there would be a couple ways that you could approach that. You can like kind of play at being a man and heighten those aspects, or you can go like, I'm gonna disappear and be unrecognizable as a woman. So like, how did you choose to tackle that? What was your relationship with that?
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like I'm walking a fine line because I'm not trying to hide that I'm a woman. I'm not putting on a man's voice. I'm just using my voice. I'm dressed fully in a fabulous man's clothes. They're so good. And they're a lot, y'all, you guys. The three-piece suit, it's many things. It's the suspenders. You got to take everything off to pee. That's the real hard part for me. Um, no, the thing that I imagine really when I'm thinking about Wilson is just I try to think about what it would be like to just walk through the world with like blissful confidence and to just walk into any space and assume respect and deference from everybody there without having to work for it. There's no apology ever. And that's unfamiliar for me. But I don't think it's unfamiliar for Woodrow Wilson and men of that type. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not necessarily thinking like, what is man? How do I? Well, I mean, I guess I am. I'm just thinking about the kind of those kind of qualities that it takes to be um, a president, a leader, to want to step into a role like that and to assume that you know what's best for everybody. Real daddy
Sure.
kind of a mentality. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking about. And what I think is cool is that a woman's body who is not, we're not hiding the woman. I mean, we're putting on the clothes or putting on the wig, but like, I'm a girl. To see that body inhabit those characteristics is like, wait, what? There's like a little bit of dissonance to it, which I think is really fun.
Well, I think that dissonance is so fascinating to watch in your song Ladies because it's really like the time in the show where suddenly it's the patriarchy's point of view
Yeah.
in this show that's, about women's rights. And how does that contrast work for you? It's really interesting to watch as an audience member.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to set up, right, the world that these women are inhabiting and what it is that they're fighting against. And the worldview of the patriarchy is not an outwardly aggressive worldview like against these women. The sinister thing about it is that it like just is deaf and blind and does not take them into account and assumes that its priorities and prerogatives are just capital T truth, are just what it is. And that is the sinister thing, right? It's just like, well, we're here to protect you, ladies. We're here to take care of you. That's our job. Things that you want, you don't know what you want. We know what's best for you. Hush, hush, hush. Yeah, it's really it's weird to inhabit, especially in this show. Like oh man, the song Fire and Tea in the second act is
Mhm.
it's so scary to be on the receiving end of all of that rage. Like it truly, I'm almost crying underneath all of it every night because it's really terrifying
Wow.
and effective.
Yeah, it's really it was interesting to watch just how like dismissive of women he was and how
Yeah.
dismissive of the whole suffragist movement, and how casual and easy that felt to him in this
Yes.
moment. And I'm just wondering, like, did you research him at all? Was there any kind of like aspect of him that you were surprised by that you thought, oh, I'm going to use this in the character?
Well, the thing that I think is really interesting about him is that he's an academic. I think, is the only president who has a PhD. He was the president of Princeton. Princeton's dealing with their whole relationship with Wilson recently. But that to me says something about, the men who inhabit that ivory tower. Not only is he in this position of political power, but I'm imagining, just assumes that he just knows better. And on an intellectual capacity. And I think even though he was so like casually and removed, so removed from these women. Like, again, there's no like outward aggression. It's all very, is there a fly in this room? Oh, what is that? Like, it's this small little thing. And I think that's because he just assumes that his intellectual pursuits are so much more important than anything these little dummies could possibly have to say.
Well, you do get to step out of that mode for a bit. You do appear as a, as a woman in some of the group scenes, like the
Yes.
Keep Marching moment, which are very inspiring. What is it like switching from that man mode as Wilson
Oh
into
my gosh.
that group
It's
moment?
it's really fun. And you know what? I think I'm realizing, because I only get to do that a couple of times. I do that in the march and then in the final number. My suffragist, her name is Gina. She is so excited to be there. Like, it's just, she's been waiting her whole life for this. She can't believe that she's there. And I think because Wilson is just so like, but I'm great. And what are you doing? That's cute. Gina, I have named her this, gets to just like have all of the excitement, and the hope. Yeah, I love her.
Yeah. It's a nice, I would imagine a nice contrast to
Yeah.
get to play. And I think one of the, thinking about the whole cast, what's really fun is that half of the cast is like Broadway veterans. There's Nikki M. James and Jen Colella and Emily Skinner. And then the other half of the cast is all these really amazing Broadway debuts.
Yes.
What does that do for the dynamic backstage? What is
Oh
that
my
like?
gosh. It's so exciting. It's so wonderful to be there with all these people who are, stepping into their dreams, and they're so talented and they're so ready. This cast is just incredible on every level, from the veterans to the newbies. Um, Everyone is meant to be here. We've all been working so hard. And I'm going to tell you, like, weirdly enough, this is my third Broadway show. Every one of them has been chock full, like at least half of Broadway debuts. So I know nothing but going into this with people who are so just thrilled and titillated, and it really like it makes the energy in the building really fun.
Yeah. And you've been with the show for a bit. You did it at the Public Theater off Broadway, and I know
Yes,
Shayna has done a ton of work on this
yes.
since then. What has been the biggest shift for you in this Broadway version?
Yeah, well, I'll say, like, Shana's been working on the show for about 10 years. I've been working on it with her for maybe 7. So I've seen it go through so many versions and permutations, and songs that were in and then songs that were out and then they were back in and then the lyrics got changed. It takes a lot to get to this moment. And there's just, in this version, there's so much clarity. It's very crisp. We are clear about the story that we're telling. There have been versions where we're trying to tell maybe too many stories, because there are so many stories in this movement. Like, every single person who was involved in this deserves their own musical. Shayna has said that, and I fully agree. um, but to get to this moment where it's like, we only have 2.5 hours, we've got to get through. The end is going to be the same. They get it. They get the amendment. But the point of that is, it was not inevitable. And so, how do we show the drama in the clearest possible way, between generations, between friends, to get there?
Mm,
Yeah.
That's great. And I think, speaking of thinking of Shayna and off-Broadway things, I think the first time I ever saw you on stage was probably in Great Comet down in the casino tent,
Oh
I
my
think, which
God.
also had
Yes.
Shayna in it.
Yes.
And you're both also like singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
Did that form a connection right away? Were you talking about Suffs
Oh,
way back then?
I've known Shayna since college. We
Oh
went
wow.
to, yeah, we went to college together. We were in the same a cappella group. And also, we worked with Liz Swados a lot together. She was an amazing, like, downtown prolific composer, theater maker. Um, she was like a real mentor to both of us. So we've been running in those circles together as friends and as colleagues for like a while. And I just am so proud of her, and to have seen her build this thing over years, and to get to be a part of it. Like, I just feel really lucky that I know her, and that she, beyond being a friend, like, wants to work with me as a colleague. That's really Cool. You know, and speaking of singer-songwriter stuff, like we used to when we were just starting out writing things, like we would sing in each other's bands. You know, we've been doing that forever. So it's really fun to work with people whose voices you literally know, and who you can write for. And I think and I hope that I've been one of those people for her. And that feels really special.
Yeah. And that's kind of, thinking of the Great Comet, you've been in this kind of off Broadway to Broadway pipeline before.
Yeah.
What is the most satisfying part of that experience of seeing a show grow?
Oh, wow. I mean, it really is like just getting it in front of a wider audience. Because here's the thing, like sometimes with Comet, like the show didn't really change, it just like got bigger. And there is something about, man, off Broadway, there is cool stuff happening off Broadway. Like just because the word off is in front of it doesn't mean that the work is. The work is cool. And sometimes it's a little bit like edgier than what Broadway can kind of handle, because there's a particular kind of audience. Like that's like the politics of audience that I don't really know about. But when you get it to that level, it's a kind of vote of confidence for the work that says like, yes, this kind of story deserves to be told to people across the country and like across the world. Like people come to New York to go to Broadway. So what are we going to show them on Broadway? Yeah, this story deserves to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your singer-songwriter side, you have an album coming out, My
I
Lovely
do.
Enemy,
Yeah.
and there's this single, Albertine, which I was listening to. It has this kind of like very ethereal quality to it. It is very different from Suffs. So what is like the inspiration you're working with when you are writing this type of music?
Oh man, I'm always just scratching an itch, you know? I'm looking for where's that thing that won't leave me alone? Maybe it's a little bit painful. How does it have to come out? And for me, um, I'm not particularly interested or feel like I'm bound by like the rules of pop. um, and I kind of like that. I'm always looking for like the emotional logic and the emotional through line of a song or a story, um, or a narrative, an emotional narrative. And emotions are like they're illogical. So I'm interested in finding a way to reflect that in a sort of pop medium. And I think that yeah, that's what's happening with Albertine, which I'm really excited about. People have been digging on that one. It's weird, but I like it.
Yeah, do you think of your sound as like drawing inspiration from anyone? Like, I don't know, the people like I'm listening to your songs and I'm like, I'm getting a tinge of Kate Bush, I'm getting a tinge of Jessie Ware. Like, do you think of yourself as fitting into a certain mode?
Yeah, the sort of people that I'm interested in are like St. Vincent and Tune Yards. You know, I have I write a lot of my stuff on a looping station because that's like my voice is the instrument that I can play fastest and best. The other stuff
Mhm.
I'm a little slower at. So I write a lot of things on this looper. Oh man, Reggie Watts. You know Reggie Watts?
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like I found out about him years and years and years ago through a playwright he was working with, and then I one day just Googled like what kind of looping station does Reggie Watts use, and then I bought that kind and taught myself how to use it. Um, but again, like there's something about the limitations within it because you know there's limitations in 88 keys, but there's also limitations in 4 loops. So I'm always interested too in like how to use those limitations to tell a story. So that's why I bring up Tune Yards too because
Mm.
they use looping stations really well. But I also just think about like storytellers. Like I'm interested also in playwrights and how you know, like Annie Baker is writing a play or how Michael R. Jackson is writing a play and how they're using that medium to and its boundaries and limitations to tell a story. And I'm thinking that way about music too. I'm like, I'm not thinking about necessarily like verse, chorus, bridge. Yes, I am a little bit, but also like color and texture and surprise. These are things that are important to me.
Yeah. And we've seen a ton of, singer-songwriters jump to Broadway and a lot of diversity in sound, I think, of scores. You know, like Great
Yeah.
Comet was not a typical musical theater score.
No.
There's a ton of stuff this season that feels very folk or Americana. Do you see a lane to kind of marry your the type of music you would write an album with a musical?
Well, I have written a musical. I
Yes,
wrote a
I know.
show
I'm
called. Oh yeah. Oh, here we go. Is this your
well, I'm just
transition?
saying, no, I'm just saying, is there, do you see space on Broadway for like that type of music?
Oh.
Do you have those kind of ambitions?
Oh man. Well, the musical that I wrote is real niche. It's real particular. And I'm so glad that it got done. It was produced at LCT3, which is a theater at Lincoln Center, their off Broadway space. And that was like the perfect place for it. You know, it's this musical that's inspired by the early life of this 12th century German mystic who I'm obsessed with. Um, and it was really weird and really like fractured, and the music was there was live looping in it, and there was also, you know, Hildegard, this mystic. She was played by three people simultaneously, which other people have reflected to me. They were like, oh, it's like the Cher Show or Donna Summer but cubist, which I really love. um, and I have to say, like, I don't know if it's a Broadway show. Again, because of like the kind of audience that's there, it might be a little, I might be a little off center for Broadway, and that's fine with me. That's fine with me. I'm happy to inhabit. But listen, like Great Comet made it to Broadway, so you never know. You never know. You have to find people who are as obsessed with it as you are.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is like other people are doing in the green. It's not on Broadway, but like productions have happened of it across the country, which is so cool to me. People are finding it and want to take on the challenge of this niche little show. And that means so much to me. Like Broadway would be cool, but like the fact that other people want to do it themselves and dive into it and like are not scared of its challenge is the greatest compliment I could ever ask for. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it helps to be the unique thing that people can't, you know, that's not like anything else. And I think Cubist Donna Summer is not like anything else. So who knows what's in
Maybe.
store.
Yeah.
Grace, thank you so much for joining me,
Oh,
and
thank you.
congratulations on Suffs and your
Thanks.
upcoming album. We can't wait. And everyone watching, make sure you stick with us at Gold Derby for the rest of the season. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.